being confident is being prepared.
What are systems that you have set up in place?
Outrageous if you look at it on a piece of paper.
That's perfectly in line with the research. Goal achievement is the foundation for literally any goal anybody sets.
Went into my coach's office. There was like a points category, all-time points leaders at the school. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna get 24 points.
How did that help your confidence talking to your coach?
She made everything, when I was speaking to her, sound so attainable.
How do you get into that headspace where you feel like you can be creative to where you do have that confidence?
Which I actually haven't noticed this until me just explaining this right now.
That is a really big thing for confidence. If you did want to dive into how you can attack your mental on your opponent's side.
Yeah, actually, I would like to hear that because I'm curious as to what you could do.
Pick a topic.
Like, insane to me. Like, people obviously don't think of those things to do to use as their advantage. Like, as an athlete.
Welcome to the All Mental Podcast for athletes, where we do a deep dive into the mental strategies so you can be able to gain a competitive edge in any sport that you play. And not just on the defensive side of things with confidence and handling failure, being focused, but also on the offensive side of things. How you can be able to attack your opponent's mental game so you can gain an even greater overall performance. I'm your host, Charles, and while I am a licensed therapist, this is only for informational and educational purposes only. This is not a substitute for your own individual therapy. If you do need a therapist, please do find one inside your area. Offensive Player of the Year, First Team All-Conference, All-North Region, Hannah Anselmo of Division I Soccer for Stonehill College. Welcome to the All Mental Podcast for athletes. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm really happy to be here and just talk through everything with you.
Perfect. I'm just going to dive right on into things. I'm really excited you want to talk about goal achievement, actually, because goal achievement is the foundation for literally any goal anybody sets. So those specific strategies is the first initial thing that someone needs to be able to set up. But how do you define goal achievement, and how has that helped you to be able to get to where you are?
For me, like, I was really big on figuring out what I wanted to do for the season. I don't know if I define it as a specific thing. Obviously, not the best way to define it is through success, because obviously you're gonna reach obstacles in the way and you're gonna hit parts where you're like, okay, this isn't what I wanted. So I don't want to define it as like success, but reaching something that is challenging for me or reaching a standard that I've set for myself, I would list that as like goal achievement.
So when you first set that standard, I'm sure you set a different one at each season. What are the strategies that you do from the jump just to be able to set the standard for your achievement that season?
One thing that is very important to me and definitely how I play as a player is I need to hold a lot of confidence just because of the way I play is very creative. It's ballsy, if you were to say. So if I don't have the confidence, then my game's really diminished. So I think the most important thing for me is having that confidence, and the way that I reassure myself and make sure I'm consistent with that confidence throughout the season and before the season is genuinely like practicing. One thing I've always been told is like, you encounter nerves because you feel unprepared. So my like philosophy into being confident is being prepared. As long as I feel prepared, I feel confident. And that's kind of how I like set everything up for myself through that.
People being prepared is a really strong proponent for confidence because it's very concrete. Like, you know what you did to be able to prepare that week before, or even during the off season, what you did to be able to prepare, whether it's physical or whether it's, health wise, or what you're consuming as far as nutrition goes. So I want to dive super deep onto that preparedness. Is how, I don't want to lead with the question, but I want to see how you do it first before I talk about the research side of things. But how do you make sure you're prepared? Like, what does that look like? Like, how do you strategically make sure you're prepared? What are systems that you have set up in place that you do to make sure you're prepared?
Throughout the off season, which is basically just the summer, because we do have a spring season. So the winter and the summer is, so like currently this time, and then the summer is where I prepare the most and where I'm focused the most on improving. My day to day during the summer is like outrageous if you look at it on a piece of paper. It's I wake up in the morning, I have a routine every single day. I work out, I lift, I do conditioning, go to work, come back, make sure I'm getting the right amount of protein in, make sure I'm getting the right amount of calories in through the like minuscule time I have to eat. And then I will either train on some of the days, like actually play soccer, and I'll hyper focus on something that I really want to work on. And funny enough, this off season, what I worked on most frequently was finishing and shooting.
Mm,
Um, and that's kind of what my week will look like. It's working out, conditioning, work, eating, training, or I go to another job. So that's kind of every single day, and I'm in a routine. So it becomes easy, and it seems like a lot at first glance, but it
yeah.
becomes routine for me. And I think really like the best way for me to stay prepared, or the best way for me to be confident, is to really harp on what I need to work on. And I make
Mm.
sure that I'm consistently doing that and putting the effort into it.
And you mentioned on a piece of paper it looks outrageous. So is it something you write down, or is it something you just have in your head that you just kind of?
I have a huge board right here in my room.
Mm, yeah.
And I'll write down what days I have conditioning, my work schedule,
Mm,
my lift schedule. And then we get like sheets for the summer to follow,
yeah.
and I'll follow those sheets that are just like on my phone. That
Mm.
is the lifts and the conditioning and plyometrics and any extra stuff like that. But all of it is all on my board, and I'll consistently look over it. Once the day's done, I get a full cross.
Mm.
If I wasn't able to do something, or if there was a time lapse, I'll cross it out on that day and find another gap in another day, hopefully, to fix that out.
That's perfectly in line with the research, like I told you in the very beginning. So the I'll go into the research side of things. Because literally, you did everything, and there's one more thing that you probably also did too. So goal achievement from a research standpoint is literally how you set up the goal from the jump, from the get go. There's a couple different things they need to be able to do. The first one everyone pretty much knows about: SMART goals, specific, measurable. I'll say it slower in case someone doesn't know. But specific, measurable, attainable, relatable, time based. You have your basic SMART goals. Now, there's a caveat in there, that the specific part. I want to put a pause on that for a second, because when you set a goal, if you set a really specific goal, like I want to score, you scored 9 goals this season.
8 goals, 6 assists.
All right, cool. So if you're like, I want to score 10 goals, what's difficult about that, and you can also roll that into defining success and how that plays into your confidence, as if you're halfway through the season, you only have 2 goals, you're basing your success on how many goals you have. So
Right.
having an overall goal that's very specific makes it really difficult to be able to, one, stay motivated, two, stay confident. An overarching goal should be kind of vague. It should still be, maybe not a bit measurable, but it should be a bit vague. Like your goal is to win, but again, you talk about the process of things, and for you was specifically finishing. I need to
Right.
finish more. That's your overall goal. And then you have sub goals. The sub goals are the things that are specific and things that you can change. So sub goals is what's your nutrition like, so you can be able to last the entire game, whether it's strength or whether it's agility, or whether, like, what are the specific things you're going to be able to do to get to being able to finish more. Is it watching film or watching yourself on film? There's all these different aspects that you can be able to do. The sub goals are what change and shift. So as you monitor your progress, which is one of the other aspects of goal achievement, is once you have your overall goal, once you have your sub goals, write them out and monitor your progress, aka your board on the wall. So as you monitor your progress, you can see, am I getting better at finishing? I'm not? Okay, no big deal. That goal is still the same. How do I adjust my sub goals? Do I
Mhm.
increase, as agility doing well for me? I just need to increase doing it, increase intensity, increase the duration, increase how many times I do it. Or do I need to add in another sub goal, something I need to be able to do to help me to be able to get there? So that is the fundamental aspects of goal achievement, how anyone should be setting up their goals. If you set it, if it's set up wrong and you don't do the right sub goals, you won't get the overall goal that you want. And I think another thing too that's in there as well is called if then plans. So if this happens, then I do this. So it's kind of your planning for things to change. So if after a month, I don't know, whatever measurement you want to set for yourself, maybe you play some pickup games or whatever. Like, if after a month I see this, then I'm going to change to this. Or an if then plan that you have is, if I miss something on my goals for the day, then I fill in a spot to do it later on. That is literally an if then plan. So
Mhm.
see, it's all like It's exactly in line with the research, literally everything that you do.
Right.
And so I think what's also important too is having that top goal a bit vague in the sense to where if you know you're making progress towards it, that can help how you define success. And I'll ask you how you define success in a bit because I know you said it wasn't, you did it a bit differently because otherwise you kind of get trapped in your own mind. But if the goal is vague, then you can, it's, this actually comes from New Year's resolution research, which is interesting. But if the goal is vague, then you can be like, all right, I only have one goal so far this season. It's like 5 games in, but I'm like either taking more shots on goal or I see just through film like that I am being able to produce better on the field. I'm not getting all the goals I want, but I'm producing better on the field. So
Right.
therefore, I'm still making it towards my goal, and that can help you with defining success and the confidence piece. So I think that was interesting. And so if you have any follow up on that, but then two, my question is, how do you end up defining confidence? Not confidence, sorry. How do you end up defining success? How do you end up
Um,
defining success?
yeah, just to follow up on your last thing, which is
Yeah.
something I forgot to mention about my goal setting. At the beginning of the season, I obviously you work super hard during the off season and you get there to obviously express what you've done over the summer to showcase yourself and earn your
Mm,
spot. And I got like tweaked my groin and my hip like 3 days in, sat out for like a week, and it bothered me the entire season. And I had to just kind of like put it to the side and be like, all right, like I'll figure it out at the end of the season. Because it
yeah.
was like super frustrating because you work so hard all summer to get to that point, and then it's like kind of taken away from you. And
Mm,
something that I did during the time that I was injured was I wrote down every single game, where the game was, if it was away, if it was home, and I wrote down, which this was an insanely difficult goal for me to reach, and I was so close to
mm,
reaching it. But I wrote down my goals, I wrote down my assists, and then I wrote at the bottom my total points. I wish I had the paper with me, but it's in my dorm on my desk.
yeah.
And I wrote down all of those things, and I because we have a tough non-conference schedule, I left like a goal and an assist for non-conference, which left my entire conference to be like I had to be on my game every single game.
Yeah.
Um, and I did end up keeping up with it. And then
Nice.
another goal that I was like working towards with that, and why I even started writing that in the first place and jotting all those things down was at the beginning of the season, I went into my coach's office and I expressed this to her. I was like, I am having a tough time with my self esteem because I keep defining my success on winning or losing, and
Hmm.
it's hurting my confidence as a player. I was like, I need to like focus on something individually so that even if something isn't going right with the team, I'm not putting all that blame on myself,
Yeah.
and I'm at least reaching these small goals within it. And there was like a points category for like all-time points leaders at the school. And
Mm,
she was like, it ranged from like 30 something point or 40 points to like 21. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna get 24 points. And then I
yeah.
wrote all those things down for all the games. Um, and that's kind of how I like really kept on top with everything was like, okay, this game, I have this, and I took it very seriously, like you said, with film and things like that. Like I would figure out the defenders, I would scout the defender,
Hmm.
and I would figure out what I could do in that game to make sure that I'm producing, not only so that my overall goal could hopefully be accomplished by winning as a team, but also that individual goal that's going to keep my confidence and my self-esteem rising throughout the season.
So what's interesting about self-esteem and failure, you mentioned how if you don't, if the team doesn't win, then you kind of burden that self, they put that burden on yourself and it becomes
Right.
a failure thing. The interesting thing about self-esteem is self-esteem and failure are going to go hand in hand. So individuals that have a higher level of self-esteem are able to see failure, look at failure, and learn from the failure. If you have a lower self-esteem, it becomes difficult because then you start putting the blame on other things that happen. I think even
Mhm.
injury sometimes people can get injured and then it becomes difficult because that's like a failure in a sense. Like, there's nothing you could do about it. Like you tweaked
Right.
something or you broke something or you pulled something, but they view that as they themselves are a failure, and it's like there's nothing you can like. it is what it is. Unless
Yeah.
you ran into the wall on purpose and broke your ankle, then it's like, well, yeah, it's your fault. But if you can take a step back and be like, all right, I'm not a failure. It happened. It is what it is. What can I do next to be able to grow from that? And I think
Mhm.
you writing everything down allowed you to be able to keep track of things and figure out where you need to be able to go to grow from that. And I think also talking to your coach, two things. One, talking to your coach, I wonder how did that help your confidence talking to your coach, and how did that help you guide you into where you kind of need to go to be able to build confidence as well?
My coach is so, so, so supportive. She's very in tune with like the emotional and mental aspect of Division One soccer, which is
Yeah,
such a blessing to be part of her team. And her like really like hold that high in our team culture. And the best thing that she did for me was when I went into her office and I was talking to her about this, and she was like, "All right, like let's check it out. You want to go for goals? You want to go for assists? You want to go for points?"
mm,
She made everything when I was speaking to her sound so attainable that in my brain I was not questioning if I could do it or not. I wasn't
yeah,
feeling like insecure of the goal that I made or if I set the bar too high. She was very open with me and was like, "Okay, well, do you think you could do this? Do you think you could do that?" And was so like supportive and encouraging of me like wanting to do something like this. Knowing the
mm,
tough schedule we have, knowing how naive we are like within the league just because we've only been here for 2 years. She
right,
still was like, "All right, like let's do it." And even throughout the season, like I would score or I would get an assist and she'd be like, "All right, like hey, like 1 point closer, 2 points closer, like keep it up."
mm.
Like she was so supportive and encouraging of the goal that I wanted to set.
I think that's amazing. I think it's so powerful the level that how coaches can impact confidence,
Right.
and I'll skip over defining success for a bit because now we're into the confidence realm. But what's interesting is there's you mentioned like your performance versus the outcome, which actually there's confidence is in four different realms. You have physical confidence, you have mental confidence, or rather your ability to be able to maintain a certain level of confidence during the game because it can fluctuate. You have performance confidence, like how you actually performed, and then you have outcome confidence. So it sounds like you're focused on the outcome driving your confidence with like getting the win or getting a loss. But then it's kind of shifted towards performance. Like yes, you still want to win. That's obviously still the goal, but the outcome confidence is still there as well. And so coaches can really impact that because if they kind of drive you having that work ethic, they can drive you reaching to be able to work hard, be with your team, have teamwork, and just learn from your mistakes. They that helps actually drive that performance confidence. So it's really amazing that your coach took that time to be able to do so. So like during that whole process of every game, keeping track of how you're doing, how do you think that impacted your confidence in doing that? Do you feel like if you had a good game, it really made a boost? Do you feel like if you had a worse game that lowered your confidence, or do you feel like just doing that process actually helped maintain it being steady?
In Division 1 soccer or really any sport, you're applauded for statistics. You're applauded for like your success is defined by scoring a goal, how many points you have, how many assists you have. I have played the same exact way my past 3 years, yet
Mm-hmm.
this year I had X amount of points, X amount of assists, X amount of goals, and I've got so much recognition for it.
Wow.
So like I don't know if it's like it definitely helped my confidence when I was reaching those goals,
Mm-hmm.
but it was difficult and challenging for me to be like, "Okay, I didn't reach my goal this game," but I never like sulked on it or allowed it to like seriously affect me like
Mm-hmm.
mentally or when I'm playing. I was just like, "Okay, next game, I got to be better." Um
Yeah.
it wasn't it didn't really impact my confidence because I was aware that I could accomplish it. After I scored, like,
Mm-hmm.
my first 2 goals, I was like, "Okay, like, I can do this. I know how to
Yeah.
score. I've been here before. I've been playing for X amount of years. I I can do this," and I was confident in that. But was it challenging? Absolutely. Like, to hold yourself to that bar and keep the bar at the same level, yeah. But I don't think it negatively impacted my confidence, throughout the season.
So basically, so it's like it didn't negatively impact because you knew based on your past experiences as an athlete, you can definitely be able to achieve that. And great that you moved up in the division to D1 after you saw success in that side, that division. It's like, oh, if I can do that here, I can be able to go and continue to be able to have that same success. If I'm
Right.
continuing doing the things that I'm doing as far as work ethic wise and health wise and training wise, I can continue to be able to build that because I'm only going to get better over time. I'm only going to improve over time, so I can be able to help that. So I know you mentioned back to defining success a bit. You talked about how defining success was based off of statistics from a D1 standpoint. Is that how you define it as well, or did you define success a bit differently?
I don't define playing well or performing well or success as scoring a goal and having an assist. I think my mentality this season, like, definitely promoted that a little bit.
Hmm.
And the league promotes that and everything around you promotes that. But I personally, like, when I have a game where I'm creative on the ball, where I'm comfortable on the ball, when I get the ball, something's like happening when I have a game like that. That's when I'm like, I had a good game today.
Right.
Obviously this season, I had games where I played so miraculously mid and I
Hmm.
scored a goal and I was like almost content because of the goals that I had set for myself. Whereas
Yeah.
like if that had happened last year and I played the way that I played in that game and I didn't score, I would have been like, I didn't have the best game today.
When you say creative on the ball, what do you mean by that? Do you mean just you're able to lock in and be in the zone, or be able to create? Like, what do you mean by creative on the ball?
There's obviously different types of players. There's people who are athletic and
Hmm.
fast and pacey and strong, which is nothing like me. And then there's people who are technical and creative. It's more of like when you get the ball, you're able to see what can happen. You can create on the field.
Hmm.
And the way that I play is I don't know if you've ever like watched certain players play. Like do you know who Neymar is?
Yeah, I've heard of Neymar. I haven't
Okay.
watched him play, but I heard of him. Yeah.
He's he's very, like, creative and, like, entertaining.
Hmm.
Like, he does things that you don't really need to do, but it's like, "Oh, like, okay," like and he's just,
Hmm.
like, doing his thing. Like, that's how I would describe creativity. It's like you get the ball and it's like it's almost like you're, like, trying to entertain. It's like, when
Hmm.
I get on the ball and I'm being creative and I'm having fun and I'm comfortable on the ball, I play my best because I'm confident on the ball, and when I'm
Yeah.
creating, I'm also just like I'm being free. Like I'm not afraid to make a mistake or I'm not
Hmm.
afraid to give up the ball. Like I'm just
Hmm.
being creative.
All right, so that creative headspace, when you're in that headspace, leads to confidence, which then also ends up leads to you scoring goals because
Right.
you feel comfortable in that sense. So in a game to where you're feeling creative, you feel like that is a successful game because that's kind of how you want to play. It's kind of how you want to be. And if you can score
Mhm.
goals on top of that, that's even more successful because like, all right, I played my style, how I want to play that to where I play best, and I'm still able to be able to achieve those goals that I set for myself to
Right.
be able to help the team win ultimately because there's so many ways that the team can win and that's how you kind of help the team win best. All right, so my question for you then is knowing that that's how you set things up for goal achievement, knowing how that's how you define success, rolling into confidence, and then how do you, when you're on the field or maybe before you get to the field, how do you get into that headspace to where you feel like you can be creative? Let me just start there actually. Pre-game, how do you get into that headspace where you feel like you can be creative to where you do have that confidence?
So I'm very big on music. I use
Mm,
music for everything. It's something I've always used since I was younger to ease myself, ease my mind, get excited for something, get hyped for something.
yeah.
A lot of players, the way they lock in is they'll put some headphones on and they won't speak. Like I said, like when I'm on the field and being creative, I feel like, which I actually haven't noticed this until me just explaining this right now, but
Nice.
in the locker room, like before the game, my vibes are so high. Like I'm
Mm,
dancing. We have music on in the locker room. I'm cueing songs, like, I'm getting other teammates up and dancing, like, I'm super, like, energetic and, like,
Mm,
just, like, really vibing with whatever's on. And honestly, I feel like that kinda, like, free spirit, like, just, like, doing my own thing and, like, having fun with it is what actually probably allows me to get on the field and be like, "Alright, like, Imma do my thing today, I'm gonna have fun
mm.
and be creative," and that's, I think, what allows me to be creative and then be confident and, ultimately reach that goal that I'd set for myself.
How much does team dynamics play into that? Like, let's say hypothetically that you're in the locker room dancing free spirit and your teammates like weren't really vibing. They're like, oh, it's Hannah, right? So, how does team dynamics play into that? Like, if the team's not vibing, let's say they had a bad day. Let's say it's pouring outside. You know what I mean? Does that impact your confidence, or is it just because you're doing you, then you're good?
I think our team is so, so close that,
Mm,
like, it's like having a sibling, like, if my
yeah.
sister is not messing with me in that moment, like, Imma still be in your face, like,
Hmm.
I'm just gonna be keep doing what I'm doing, and I know I'm gonna crack a laugh out of you, or I'm gonna crack a smile out of you at one point, and, like, that's
Yeah.
enough for me to be like, "Alright, I'm gonna keep doing this." I think there genuinely has not been a moment where, like, yeah, there's certain teammates that are like, "I'm gonna lock in," but I know who that is,
Right.
um, and, like, there's always 2 or 3 teammates that are consistently coming into the locker room and matching my energy. So,
Mm.
like, I've never really even encountered that moment where, like, the team's been on a different level than me because there's always a couple people that I like matching it.
That's awesome. I think, and then relating this back to the research too, team confidence is something different than individual confidence. It can be played in a different role. So for example, the like team leaders, for example. So if the team leader has confidence in the rest of their team as far as their skill ability, as far as their ability to be able to play, they encourage you to be able to be free in your play. That actually helps the team as a whole feel like they can execute with what they want to execute with. They can shoot how they want to shoot, and also helps them with their overall confidence they could be able to win the game. So I think team dynamic is really important as well. And even though obviously everyone has their own different wavelength, but how you connect it with, I have at least 2 or 3 teammates that I know if I'm, having a good time, they're going to be able to do that with me. And I like how you had that thought process of like, well, actually, when I do that, that's how I get confidence. That's how I feel loose. That's how I feel creative, and you can carry that onto the field, which is amazing. I'm glad. See, that's why I like the podcast too, because you know some things, I know some things. It's really
Right.
interesting. All right, so that's before game. What about during game? How do you keep that creativity during game?
I'm pretty superstitious as well.
Mm,
So even during warm up, I will do the same thing every warm up.
yeah,
I always keep my penny on until I walk out. I always tape my right wrist. Um, I always hit my right heel and then my left heel after the walkout and right before I start the game, and I'll like jump around a couple times.
yeah.
And then keeping that like confidence throughout the actual game. For me, it's like, okay, this half didn't go how I wanted it to. What was I doing wrong?
Mm,
What was I doing right? What did I do right? Okay, whatever I did right, I'm gonna keep doing that.
mm,
What I didn't do right, how can I fix it? I like to break myself down at halftime, and I usually do that through speaking. When we have halftime and things are going right or they're going wrong, I'll usually be the one to be like, "All right, this is happening," and I'll talk through kind of not what I was doing wrong, but what we are doing wrong as a team, and then I'm able to identify what I was doing wrong. Was I doing too much when I was getting on the ball? Was I not opening up enough? Was I not doing whatever it is? I'm able to identify that, and
yeah.
then understanding what I did right keeps me level and confident throughout the game.
2 things. One, being superstitious and doing the same thing every single game is actually really good. I've talked about this on a few different podcasts. It's habit formation. Doing certain things is a stimuli for your brain that triggers a particular habit, and a stimuli. All right, I'll back up a bit. So, like when you walk into your kitchen, the stimuli is your kitchen. It stimulates your brain, or it sends a response to your brain to be able to do a certain action, certain behavior. Typically, that means we're hungry. So then that's why when you open up your fridge, you're like, why did I open my fridge for? I have no clue why. Because it's a stimulus. It's a habit. Your brain is like, I'm in kitchen. I usually open my fridge. I usually get something out the fridge. and then you open your fridge, you don't know what you're looking for, but it's just because it was a habit. So you
Right.
having that game day routine that's the same thing over and over again helps your brain get into the habit of now it's soccer time. So habits are really good, and having a pregame superstitious routine is very very good. It helps lock your brain in. Now the aspect of during halftime, like talking, like I think that's also good to be able to recognize what helps you be able to maintain that confidence is talking things out, having conversations, whether like with this your whole team or with this, or whether it's with a certain individual or whatever the case may be, and then mapping out like I did X, Y, and Z right. Let's keep on doing that. That's dope. That's good. Check. Here are the things I need to work on. That's interesting. So everyone's different, right? So anyone listening, it's some people. Like I was talking to another soccer player, Ben Kelly. For him, he does visualization. Everything's sunshine and rainbows. He's like, if I think about bad things happening, like no bueno, then I do bad things inside the game. I need to be sunshine and rainbows for me. But other people, it's all right. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? And then how can I fix this stuff? Whether it's during halftime or depending on the different sports, like if you play football, then every time you're off the field, you can be able to think about things, or basketball, every time you're on the bench, you can be able to think about things. So everyone plays things differently. I think being able to look at what you're doing wrong and how you can make corrections is really important. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. Actually, research suggests doing it your way. There's no right way, and there's no wrong way to be able to do things. So I think that's awesome. It's fascinating. And then post game, I think you already kind of alluded to this as far as confidence wise. You mark down all your stats and where you're at. If you did well, like that's great. What did I do that was working well that I can continue doing? If I didn't do well, how can I be able to continue to be able to build and do that way? I like to break things down to pre-game, during game, post game, and so I like that's your system for confidence. Like that you have a system for achieving your goals as far as setting the foundations. You have a system for how you define success, which is largely based on how you set up your goal achievement. Then you have a system for your confidence, and knowing what those systems are, then you can tweak the systems. Like it's easier to have a system set up and then I'm gonna tweak this, I'm gonna tweak that because that's what's better for me. Um, there's one thing you mentioned. You mentioned like to scout your opponents and scout on the other side of the ball. Do you make plans to attack your opponent's mental game when you're scouting them, or is it just more like the technical side of things?
It's definitely technical.
Mm,
However, if I were to watch a player play and I see like they evidently have a short fuse,
yeah.
they are kind of a crash out on the field, I'm gonna play defense super, super tight, super handsy on you so that I can get in your head.
Mm,
But I don't think I haven't encountered that. I also it's mostly technical. What is their body shape? What are they always gonna try and force me to do?
right.
If they don't do that, what am I gonna do? It's usually pretty brief when I do go over it. It's like maybe I'll pick 1 or 2 games from them, and I'll
Mm,
just scroll through until I find what's the most amount of time that they come up to a player, their body position. Are they straight? Are they side on? Are they to the left? Are they to the right? How can
yeah.
I exploit it?
Yeah.
Um, and that's something that I did. It was brief, but it was very helpful for me. And gave me more confidence because I felt prepared.
Yeah. I think and I think that's a good point you just mentioned at the last bit is you felt prepared. So I think that is a really big thing for confidence if you feel prepared, and it can be very concrete. Like if you have a list of things that you need to do before a game, whether it's like stretching, nutrition, exercising, agility workouts, your own film, opponent's film, having again that system. And if you do everything, like, all right, I feel prepared because I know I did everything I could do to be able to get to this point. In actuality, even if you couldn't do everything, I think the mindset on game day being, I am where I am right now, it's the best it's going to be. All right, let's go into it. Like
Right,
also having that acceptance to be like, however I practice. If you had a great week, then like yes, build on that. Like I had an amazing week. Let's do it. But even if you had a midweek or a kind of a low week based on life happening, stuff happens. You're also a student, so you have academics and finals and papers and everything else going
right,
on. Even if you couldn't shifting that mindset to be like, I did the most that I could, or even if I'm really tired, I didn't really do a lot. Either way, in this moment right now, I'm the best I'm going to be. So there's no point in harping on it. I am where I am right now, so let's operate how we're going to operate to the best of our abilities. That's amazing. I love that that the different focuses that you have and how that really played a role into your confidence, and then playing a role ultimately in how you're able to perform on the field. If we did want to dive into how you can attack your mental on your opponent's side, ask away for that too, because I'm also really interested in that stuff too.
Yeah, actually, I would like to hear that because I'm curious as to what you could do.
Pick a topic. Pick either focus, confidence, or anger.
Confidence.
Confidence, cool. All right, so let's reverse engineer it. So confidence one is like you mentioned before, preparation, which might be kind of hard because you don't know how they prepare. Actually,
Right.
I take that back. You can. So actually, I really do take this back because Ben Kelly and I, the soccer player, we were talking about this. So you
Mhm.
watch film. So one thing Ben mentioned is he would tell them like, "Hey, our scouts told us that you were going to do that thing." So if you watch film actually on the player yourself, you can say like, "Oh, I knew you're going to do that. Like, thanks for doing that. Like, cool. I'm glad. Appreciate that." So actually, let me back up even further. Let me really, really, really back up. I think attacking mental game has some different fundamentals to it. This comes from the book. You ever heard of the book 48 Laws of Power?
I have not.
It's a really big book on manipulation, but it's basically rules and guidelines for manipulation. It's usually like in the workforce that they utilize it, but you can use it in sports too. And actually, I think this might actually match your demeanor too. So you're really energetic, really exciting, like really hyped up. I think that actually is one of the best ways to be able to attack someone's mental game. Because if you're excited, if you're happy, if you're like, hey, what's up? Like, let's have a great game today. Two things happen. Either they might view you as a weakling, which is totally fine because then they underestimate you, or they might be like, oh, Hannah's super chill. Like, nice. Like, I get to like be with someone chill all game. And that's still super fine because then it's easy for them to be able to attack their mental game. From a confidence standpoint, there's a couple of different things for confidence. If you watch film and you notice something that's happening regularly and it happens in game, you can point that out very quickly. Because again, attacking the mental game is not going to make some massive blow. It's to just put a big weed in there a little bit. If you do it early in game, the better, because then the weed ends up growing and growing and growing. So if like, oh, like yeah, you always go to your right a lot. Like that's happens to be my one of my specialties. I like going to my left a lot. So mentioning that stuff up really subtly in a way that is almost supportive, like almost
Mhm.
nice. You don't want them to know that you're attacking their mental game. So that's one way for as far as preparation goes. Imagery is another one. Imagery is really helpful for confidence. If you imagine how the game is going to look, if you imagine how you're going to be able to handle different situations, you can then tell them to imagine things. Like using just the word imagine, like oh man, like imagine if we like come back and we're down right now. Like oh, imagine if I score 3 goals this game. I already scored one. Imagine if I scored 3 goals. Say it to yourself, but they're right there. So having to be able to imagine something can be able to impact their confidence. And then if you think about it on the wavelength of like the same thing, like you have performance confidence, so you're attacking their performance. You have outcome confidence, like imagine if I make this particular outcome. You have physical confidence of like if you notice that they're a bigger player, like oh great, because you really used my speed this match because you're such a bigger player. Like how do you handle speed? Or if there are a really technical player, this is now attacks focus. If you notice they're really technical with something, then you can ask them. This might be hard to do in soccer. I feel like tennis this is really good for. But if like I don't know soccer as well as no tennis, but if you mention you have to figure this out. But like if there's a really technical thing that defenders do, you can mention like, wow, how do you do that so well? Like I'm really interested in like how do you I don't know the technical term of soccer, but like how do you do this really well? If you get them to think about how they're doing something, then their mind is going to focus on how they're doing something, which is not what you want on game day. Like you mentioned, you want to feel free and creative and flow. If you're thinking about how you're going to kick the ball, like what fundamental techniques you need to do to be able to kick the ball, that's not what you should be focusing on game
Right.
day. You should just be like, I'm putting ball here, boom. So on the
Yeah.
flip side, if you can get them to think about how they do something technically for defense,
They're gonna
whether
overthink
it's
that.
yeah, like, wow, you turn your hips so fast that what makes it really tough for me to be able to go to my left. And they're like, oh, thanks, Hannah. But it's like I want them you want them to think about how they do that thing. Because if you can slow them down even like a half a second, that is going to be able
Gives
to
you
be
the
beneficial
advantage.
for you. So
Right.
that's something for focus. Anger is easier. Anger does two things. One, anger is motivating and operates in the left frontal cortex of your brain, same place that motivation happens. Anger makes you feel like you could do something, makes you feel stronger, makes you feel better. However, anger is also, again, this might be really helpful for you because you play creative. Anger also makes you very narrow-minded, and it makes you very easily frustrated, obviously. But if they're more narrow-minded, if you're doing something in your strategy that which is a bit more deceiving or a bit more deceptive, that's not very straightforward, that can help you to where, like, if you fake one way, go the other way. If they're angry, they're going to jump that side more so if they're angry. And so ways to be able to trigger anger is, well, like you mentioned, you can brush up against them a lot more, whether they play really physical,
Yeah.
or you can, imagery is a really good big one, and also attacks confidence. I forgot about this one. But it's like, hey, do your teammates always look at you every single time I get by you or something? Like, and they never did that.
Yeah.
But you just plant that
That
idea so that,
that one is something I totally lied. I do that stuff
mm,
all the time.
see,
Like, only if it's, like if it's a really chirpy game and, like, people are
yeah,
getting fouled, and because I play around a lot with the ball, I tend to get hit a lot, and I'll get
mm,
fouls. And I'll be like, "Yeah," just get up, clap. I'm like, "Yeah, keep fouling me, like, keep fouling me."
yeah,
And that's only if it's chirpy, but the most I do it, which is interesting, is with my teammates. Like, if my teammates,
mm,
like, are getting in someone's head and they keep getting past somebody, I'll be like, yeah, keep going at her, like, "She can't take you right now, she can't take you right now." But
yeah,
overall, unless a game is chirpy or, like, physical, I'm very, like I'm pretty quiet. Like, I'm
mm,
pretty, like, just doing my own thing unless I'm, like, talking to the team. But I
yeah,
do that. I do that,
nice.
actually.
And you can do that team wise too. Like I mentioned, the whole being nice thing is really effective. So if it's like if you guys are playing really well and you're like, wow, like why are they? And if you could talk to your teammate. So for example, let me back up. So you can impact the confidence between players and their coaches as well. So if they're inside a certain type of defense, even if it's a fine defense, if your teammate keeps on going by, it's like, dang, they're really going to stay inside that defense, even though we know our offense is like this. Why would the coach have them inside that defense? I like it though, but you're not talking to them, you're talking to your teammate. So if
Right,
you can get them to question what their coach is doing, then if they're like, you know what, we keep on getting beat this way, maybe they're right. Like maybe my coach isn't really doing X, Y, and Z. I want to shift my way over this a little bit. I'm gonna slide this way a little bit, leaving yourself to be able to have an opening. So like, imagination is really good. Again, that gets them to imagine things, being able to get them to second guess their coaches. I have to dive more into it because it's like I have to reverse everything. But those are some different ways to be able to attack the
that's,
mental game.
like, insane to me.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, like,
It's
psychology is
fascinating.
really, like, so real, and, like, people like, obviously it's real, but it's like, I don't like, people obviously don't think of those things to do to use as their advantage, like, as an athlete.
And even it can start pregame. Like if you know how important pre-performance routine is, and let's say for example, you can go back this far too. If you watch a film and you see what your defendant's pregame routine is, you can attack that. So let's say they like to listen to music and get in the zone. Go up to them, like, "Hey, my name's Hannah. I think I'm playing today," and they're like, "Why are you over here?" And you're like, "Oh, like I'm really happy," but you're messing them up a bit. Like you're just being chill, but you're disrupting their focus. Or if they like to
Right.
be like whatever the case may be, try to be able to get them to do the opposite with the caveat that you have to be able. That's why I always talk defensive stuff first for the mental game. Because if you make someone angry and then they make you angry, well, that just did nothing. Now you're both angry. Now you're both
Yeah,
narrow-minded, and now you're both easily frustrated. Now you both make
right, right.
mistakes, and now you can't play creative. So if you're able to know the defensive side of things, like for anger, for example, would be just being aware of your emotions helps you be able to regulate your emotions. Literally, that's it. Like if you're aware of it, like, oh, I'm feeling frustrated right now. I should take a deep breath. Deep breaths allow you to be able to regulate your blood pressure, allow you to be able to slow down your heart rate physically, etc. So if you know strategies for defending against anger, then yes, then you can actually utilize anger. If you know strategies to impact confidence, you know they're having a rough day, and it's like imagine it happens all the time in practice for you that you just can't get like this. Like, hey, it's all good. I understand it. You're being nice, but you're reminding them how bad they are in practice at doing this thing further impacts their confidence. It's, especially as you see frustration is like, let me add on to that. Like you're frustrated about this. Let me tell you, like, oh yeah, I imagine that's so like difficult. I imagine when this happens, like yada yada yada. Like, yeah, I did see on film that when people do this, you respond this way. Like, I know it's something you got to work on in practice. So I'm glad it's so effective this game. And you're like, what the? But that all
Yeah.
that stuff can help weed in, and it's like it should be like jabs. It shouldn't be like I'm gonna talk about this for 3 minutes, like in your face. It's like jab, and once you jab, it's like all right, forget about it. I'm focused on my thing. So you got to be able
Mhm.
to refocus yourself so you're not all game focused on breaking down their mental game. It's like
Right.
I see opportunity, quick jab, bam, and then go off and play your game. So one thing you could do is knowing your sport, knowing how you can be able to make jabs is, and don't practice on your own teammates, but like knowing how you can make jabs, you just ruin your whole teammates' confidence. Like this is really effective. Like we're worse now, but this is great. But you can write down like, oh, this phrase will be really solid. That phrase will be really solid. When they do this, if I do this, that'll be really solid. Or like whether you kick the ball an extra little bit or whatever the case may be. But I think even just writing things down, like this is for anger, this is for confidence, this is to impact their focus. All right, this is kind of like my gameplay, my bag of tricks, and just poke, jab. Maybe be really effective, maybe it won't. But the overall goal of it is to just pause them by a millisecond. That's it. If they're a millisecond too late, they miss the ball. They don't get a chip on the ball when you kick it. Like whatever the case may be. You can chirp at the goalie if you can, if you get close enough. Like just small little things. And don't pick every player in the field. Maybe pick the goalie. Maybe pick whoever's usually defending you. Like, all right,
Mhm.
based on my quick little film assessment, anger is really good for the goalie. This is really good for this person. It's really good for this person. The goalie always looks at the coach every single time they make a mistake. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna drop at least a couple comments when I'm that way. Like your coach is really intense, huh? Like, damn, they really be yelling at you like that? Just small jab stuff. So it's interesting. It's something I'm playing with, but it's fun. It's good. Well, I appreciate you, Hannah. I appreciate you taking the time, and I hope you learn some stuff. I definitely learned some stuff. It's pretty dope talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.